So again, everybody, thanks for being here today. The Hustle Firm presents the Stay Strong webinar series, May 14th. Really excited about today. We've got a special guest here. So John and I, as you know, we're going to be presenting today. John Rizzo, managing partner here at RDG, myself, a partner at RDG. And quick note on technology here. So if you do have questions for our special guest, Mayor Duffy here, please put them in the question and answer box. And then if somebody else has a question that you want to ask, just like their question, and then we'll make sure that one gets answered. Most relevant will get answered first. If you have issues today with audio or video, let's see, we are having a little bit of audio issues, so we'll keep monitoring that. And Stacy Eggenberger, I'll let you kind of let me know if it's good or not. Hopefully, I think we can hear Mayor Duffy. That's the important part. And then slides will be done after. So real quick, thanks for attending. Hope everyone's staying safe and healthy. That's the most important part. And a big thanks to our research team. As always, they're still behind the scenes today answering questions on the PPP and the EIDL. So as if you guys have any of those questions, we will be answering those as we can. And it looks like our audio's fixed too. So also special thanks to Shelby, who's behind the scenes here, making sure that she fixes those issues quickly. Our agenda is our special guest, Mayor Duffy. Today's the special advisor to the Finger Lakes region, getting us set up. So we're going to go over some questions with him, the latest news, pending guidance, and as always, live Q&A on stimulus packages. So Mayor Duffy, welcome to the Stay Strong webinar series.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, John. Looks like John's got a beard growing from his office picture. So I appreciate having a chance to be on, and happy to, whatever you'd like me to lead off with, and happy to take your questions. We are unscripted, and we'll give you the best information that we can.
Awesome. Yeah, let's get into it here. So, our first question, I've got the dashboard up on the screen. So, I understand there's 7 tests. Could you walk through for our listeners today the 7 tests? How do we get them? Did that come out of Cuomo? And then what happens if we drop below 7 out of 7? How does that work?
Well, you can read those across the board. I think the 7 areas that were put forth by the governor, all based on public health data, and based on testing, based on hospitalization rates, intubation rates. And the key here is to have enough hospital beds available should cases spike. And the governor has put a limit of, every hospital should have at least 30% of their beds available. Elective surgery just opened up, which may impact that. But those are the areas, look at the criteria. Obviously, fatalities, hospitalizations, the bed capacity, which I just mentioned, ICU bed capacity, which really involves ventilators, which early on in this pandemic were at an extreme shortage in some areas. And then the issue of testing and tracing. Testing, we're ramping those efforts up. County Executive Adam Bello is doing a great job. We have a drive-in test site at Monroe Community College in the main campus right now. We also have both hospital systems testing every day. The test, I've not had one yet. I've had no symptoms, but not the most comfortable test. It's a swab which goes up your nasal passages, probably almost touching your brain. And people have had it certainly have not enjoyed the experience, but it's the only, I guess, the one credible test right now. The contact tracing is just getting off the ground, and that is if one of us had the coronavirus, it's having somebody assigned to go back and really basically investigate or follow up who do we have contact with. And if we do that effectively, we in essence limit the spread. But all those areas right now, the Finger Lakes is green. And we've had, I will say, the last couple of days, there's been a couple spikes. There's been spikes in Monroe County as well as Ontario County, which should not change our start date tomorrow to reopen. But I just want to reinforce to people, with all the things you see here, there's no conspiracy theory here with the coronavirus. It is real. You don't want to catch it. There's been so many deaths here, and does not just impact older people in nursing homes. We've seen young kids through people in their 90s being impacted by it. And just following the guidelines, which we'll talk about during this call, it is so important to do that. But right now, this criteria, this dashboard should be live almost every day with updates. And one of the things I go ahead and talk about, I've been asked by the governor, the next phase of this is to be the captain of what they call a regional control room. Myself and Vinny Esposito, the Empire State Development regional head. Vinny is a full partner, a great guy if you don't know him. We kind of run this control group, which has people from every county. And what we're charged with doing is to monitor these as phase one opens up, which is going to start tomorrow. If infection rates spike, hospitalization issues, bed shortages start to emanate, the governor's asking us to help make some regional decisions to try and bring that back down. He calls it a circuit breaker. What we don't want to do is open up too soon and open everything up and then have to close it a week or 2 weeks later, which is almost unconscionable to think about doing, and it really creates chaos. For those who are frustrated at the pace, I would say this, looking at the data, Governor Cuomo is making the best decisions. It's based on data. It's all public health, and every day a business is closed, not only is that business impacted and families, but so is the government. State is losing money every day. It's in his best interest to open these up, but he is not going to do it until it's safe. And so this regional breakdown of these control rooms, I think, is a great idea on behalf of the governor. And looking at those data points and a dashboard every day, critical. If I give one plug to Dr. Mike Mendoza, you've probably seen, he's our own Dr. Fauci here in Monroe County. Mike has done a great job as the county health director, along with our county executive, and he has colleagues around all the other 8 counties. And these health directors in each county, I just think they're great professionals. Their heart is in the right place. We're all working together on this, but it is all about public health and keeping these numbers down. So sorry for the long answer, but I get carried away on this stuff.
No, that's good. It's good to hear. I think that's one of the questions that we hear the most is, okay, what happens if there's a spike, if there's a change in circumstance? And it sounds like there's a circuit breaker test first before we just immediately shut down, but that we're phasing in more and more businesses so that we don't hopefully have those big spikes. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I don't want to get ahead of your questions, but we get asked all the time about plans. I might as well jump in because people have that question anyway.
Yeah, that's good. I got the 4 phases up for you.
Yeah, good. Well, I won't get ahead, but I just, if you want me to get into it, we have probably in the last 4 weeks have sent countless plans to the governor's team. And they come from national associations, state associations, businesses here. And what the governor is doing, he has a great analytics team behind the scenes. They're compiling best practices for health right now. So phase one, you see construction, manufacturing, some select retail with curbside pickup. Those are things that are opening up. And there's some new guidelines came out last night from the state. But each one of those areas has some pretty specific guidelines on a website. And I would encourage people to go to that website on there. I think you'll have it in NewYorkForward.gov. And if you would look at those as other phases come, and I want to be clear, I can't say when phase 2 will come. The governor said phase 1 starts on May 15th. We'll wait at least 2 weeks before phase 2 starts. I read that as wait at least 2 weeks, depending on the numbers, and the governor will identify when that will start. So I think people sometimes are a couple of comments with even a couple of elected officials in the media about when it will open. I'm telling you, people should not read into the next phase until we get to that point. I'm more worried about phase 1 opening safely and keeping those numbers down. So when phase 2, when that time comes, whenever that might be, 2 weeks, 3 weeks or more, we are ready and prepared to do that. So we all want to get back to work. But if I could touch on plans, because I'm asked this question consistently. New York State is not going to approve plans, everyone's plans, before they're allowed to open. But every business should have a plan in place. And you can see some of the guidelines on a website, but I'll offer 4 things. I don't care who you are, from a mom and pop business up to a major corporation. If you have in your plan these 4 things, number 1 is face masks or coverings per CDC guidelines. Number 2 is social distancing. Number 3 is hand hygiene. And I want to reinforce hand hygiene does not mean you have to go out and buy barrels full of hand sanitizer. Warm water, soap works just fine. Every doctor has said that. And number 4 is disinfecting surfaces. The virus can stay on metal surfaces, doorknobs, computers for hours or days at a time. So constant disinfecting is important. And I'm seeing some of the plans come through that of areas that aren't open yet. But I think people have done a tremendous job being very thoughtful in terms of what they will do when they get ready to reopen. So what will happen, I believe, is while there's not an approval process yet, my sense is at some point here, very soon, there will be a linkage on a website, on a web page, where a business and saying it's you guys or us will go on. We'll answer maybe 4 or 5 questions, basically certify that we do have a plan in place and it has these components, kind of sign off. So we'll be on record for having a plan. The state won't come and inspect it, but here's the thing. What will happen is if an employee is sick or complains, if a customer is sick or complains that they walk into a business and it's not really abiding by these guidelines, somebody's going to come and inspect. It could be a local zoning compliance officer. It could be somebody from a local town, village government, maybe a county. They will come, and I will guarantee you they'll probably look at that plan. I'll take it one step further. I'm not an attorney, but I can assure you, and I think you guys would agree, anyone who's in business has to be concerned about liability issues in terms of their services. I think the issue of liability with this pandemic is wide open. And so there may be a flood of lawsuits at some point. And I do think every business, you protect yourself by taking common sense steps that you do. And I don't think anyone would expect everything to be done instantaneously, but by taking steps to protect employees and customers, I do think you give yourself a great protection in that area. And sorry to go off, but I just want to get those things in, which seem to come up all the time, but really are important for people to understand how this will probably unfold.
Yeah, those are good. Those are actually the common questions that we had on this list, because that's what we're hearing from all the business owners that are on the call today. So I think John actually has a question for you too.
Yeah, first of all, Mr. Duff, we just want to thank you for your service, not only to our city and our region here, but our state. And I'm sure you weren't just sitting around waiting for a pandemic for something to do. We appreciate you stepping in with this effort as well. It's all appreciated by our firm, everyone that we've dealt with. So we thank you for being an advocate for our region. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
So one of my questions, and the question we've been getting a lot too, we've been fielding a lot of questions from our clients, business owners, and the question around flexibility. So for example, a gymnastics facility, that has kids coming to it, or a daycare, what sort of flexibility? Right now, they would, in the case of a gymnastics facility, would probably sit in phase 4. Is there any flexibility in moving, in changes in procedures or setup that would allow a business to move into, be able to open earlier than maybe what the phase would tell them to?
Good question, John. At this point, I don't think anything can open before the phase comes with the executive order in terms of what will be allowed to open. And I've reinforced people, even sometimes a county executive or elected official would say, you could open. No local official can override a governor's executive order. So I would wait for those phases to come. But going back to the points I made before, they can start preparing their business. Again, it's the distancing, the masks, the steps to protect employees and customers. In some of the areas you mentioned, therapeutic massage, some of the hands-on businesses, I'm not sure what those guidelines will look like. I think right now they're trying to take in every bit of information they can with best practices. And when there is a phase, they'll come out with guidelines which really give you a great set of parameters to follow. They're looking at those. So when they open, everybody will have a guideline. But those 4 things I mentioned, I would tell you right now, will be part of everything. Whether it is, again, a medical practice, a therapeutic massage, a dance, ballet school, gymnastics, whatever it may be, where there's a lot of hands-on contact or close proximity. There's going to be guidelines that'll be set forth. And I think right now they're trying to establish the best ones. And that's why this whole phased-in process is really brilliant on behalf of the governor, because you're staging it, you're testing and measuring. before the next one, and maybe in many ways figure out what works and what doesn't work. And so you're better prepared for a next stage as opposed to everybody all in like some states are doing. And I think you're going to see some states that it may ingratiate their governor or whatever to their constituents in a short term. But if they have a huge spike, they have to pull back. I think that's the wrong way to go. So that's why I think there's a great degree of caution. And I want to reinforce, we understand the economic impact. Everybody is losing money at this point. We want everybody to get back to their livelihoods. To speak for the governor, he wants that. It's just doing it in a manner which does not have to be pulled back down the road. And so that's why this process is in place. And I've been very careful to say, look, I don't make decisions. I get information to the governor. I get plans. I share anything. And anybody listening wants to get you guys plans, suggestions. We have a direct route to the governor's team. We get that to them. It'll all be considered. But people call me every day or email me and say, Bob, can I open my business? I'm like, Bob does not have that authority. Bob will pass on what you are doing, but only one person can do that. And even the governor's team does not have the authority. The governor will come out when he is ready. And I do think he's upgraded a lot of these guidelines lately. He's trying to push things along. But I understand the frustration. He does too, but I do think this is the best way to proceed. But we're always available. I mean, our chamber, you can email, call, believe me, emails start at 5 a.m., finish around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. We try and answer as many as we can on that day, but we are swamped with emails and Zoom meetings, but the information flow is important. And sometimes people put things out in the media which aren't accurate. So we have to correct those. I can't say there's a couple of stories coming out of Western New York, gyms and fitness centers and phase 2 and salons. That's not, I can assure you, the governor's not made that decision yet. So people that give those pieces of information are not really well informed because the governor makes those. When he's ready, he'll come out with that. But I have no idea when it comes in phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Those decisions have not been made yet.
Yeah, it's a good point. There was a lot of rumors going on that businesses had to submit plans to the state and get those plans approved. So thank you for clearing that up. And I know the chamber had come out with an email that said that is not the case. So the chamber really has been a good source of information. What are the other good sources of information for business owners that are on this call? Where should they be pointing to first?
Well, I think the state website is perfect. NewYorkForward.gov. That has the guidelines on there. And I would go to the state website. It's forward.newyork.gov. It has the most up-to-date information, and it gets updated sometimes every day or every other day. So that is probably one of the best sources of information for businesses. We refer people. You go on our Greater Rochester Chamber website. You have a link on there to it as well. And then if you're not clear, because sometimes there's questions, there's clarifications, call or email us. We will try and get you an answer as soon as we can. I have a great team here. Mark Cohen is on my team here. Mark, we are probably on the same email schedules and phone schedules every day and every night. Dan Smith's our communications director. Kevin Downey, our membership director. We're all kind of in sync with each other. So whatever portal you go through, we will try and get the best answer we can back to you right away.
Thank you. Just a question. We have a lot of restaurant owners that are on the call. We get a lot of questions about restaurants reopening and guidelines relating to restaurants. And you kind of went over the 4 general criteria for any business to reopen. Will restaurants have more specific guidelines?
Yes, they will, John. And actually, I was on a call with some of the governor's key leaders on this. And actually, I won't mention names, but 2 very prominent Rochester business leaders who own restaurants. And it was a great call, and both these leaders are very thoughtful in terms of their suggestions. And it goes back to, if you're in a restaurant, it's the social distancing, it's the tables, it's the service. It's also distancing in the kitchen, where sometimes you have, in a bigger restaurant, you might have 5 or 6 people back there preparing different types of food for that night. Keeping those people apart, distance, masks, protections, all the sanitation issues, those will all apply right now. And, you know, at some point they're going to be reopening. I can't tell you what phase or when, but when that time comes, I think there will be much more specific guidelines I'm giving. But those 4 things I mentioned, those are like the 4 universal issues that will be in every single plan with certain nuances. And a lot of restaurants are forwarding plans to us already, which we in turn forward to the governor's team. And I have to say, some very thoughtful plans, suggestions, how they operate. A lot of restaurants, maybe some on a call, have been terrific in very, deep thinking, strategic planning for this process, because we understand a lot of jobs are available. Restaurants, salons, bars, we understand those are all huge economic drivers in this entire region. And we understand that the pain that people are going through, but we'll take any information we can. I'm on calls every day and listening and trying to share information. And so if anyone listening wants to submit a plan, our email is on our website. You might not get an answer back in the first hour, but be patient with us. We'll get back to you right away. But the one thing we will do, if you have a plan, we'll forward it. You don't have to submit it. I'm not a judge of the plans. And I think in the end, when the guidelines come out, that'll be the best judge for, say, restaurants. But those 4 things are a foundation. And I believe in guiding principles. If you have certain guiding principles for what you do, you'll be fine. And those 4 areas with the face masks, the distancing, the hand sanitizing, and the disinfecting, they will be prominent in probably a majority of every single plan, whatever industry you are. And I would also add, in construction, which is phase 1, there are construction teams getting ready to go tomorrow, this weekend, who will have one person on every construction project, one person assigned to temperatures, monitoring, masks, distancing for the COVID. So they're really thinking very thoughtfully ahead of what they will do, because they do not want to shut down. And as you all know, our season is very short here. We're in prime time right now. We don't want to delay any longer. So having these guidelines in place, keeping them, and keeping those numbers down across our data points is critically important.
Mayor Duffy, thank you very much for that. And we realize you only have you have 1 more minute here, so we'll leave you with the last one here. So speaking of dealing with Cuomo, he's become quite a celebrity lately. How's it dealing with him behind the scenes?
Well, I'll tell you what, the governor is both a friend and a colleague. Served with him for 4 years. I knew him before he was governor. I know when he was attorney general. I would say this, and some people have seen the same thing. There is a side of him people don't know. He's super bright. He's very strategic. He is a great person to work for. He engenders loyalty. He is so hardworking. He's out of bed probably 3 or 4 o'clock every day. I remember I used to get texts at 3:50 in the morning from him, and I'm a light sleeper from my first career, so I'm up anyway. He has a great sense of humor. He does. He is a leader, and what you see now, I was with him during Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Lee, floods. He is a boots on the ground, out front leader, and he suffers no fools. You better be prepared. When you have a meeting, come prepared. It's about the data. It's about action. It's about results. That's him. And this is not a put on. This is what he does so well. And I'm proud of him, because I think he's become a national leader during this pandemic, because what you see every day is a very common sense, plain spoken presentation. Here are the numbers. Here are the charts. Here's where we are. Here's where we were. Here's the deaths. So people can see every day where we are, the progress we're making. And I would say this, he was here twice in the last week. The governor has said a couple of times, and I agree, New York State, which is the hardest hit of any state in the union, is coming down. Other states are starting to go up. So I think we're on the right track right now. And he has mentioned, had the country and everybody knew that the disease did not come from China for us. It really came from Europe. People that maybe came out of China, they came from Italy, Spain, European countries. 2 million visitors came here before people caught on, and it spread like wildfire. Had it been contained earlier, I think we would not even be in this situation now. But now we have to live with it and live with the data points and all the steps we're taking. But he has been on point with this. I've been proud of him, and he is a leader. He really is. And I worked with him for 4 years side by side, and I tell you what you see today, I saw for 4 years. And to this day, he is a friend. He's a colleague. I have enormous respect for him. I'm going to say this too. Having been with him and been in politics, if you're around economic development, this governor does not play politics with aid, economic development, like other people have in other places. I've seen it in my life. He really, with investments he's made up here in the state and upstate, he's been phenomenal. And I know that, listen, I watch social media, a lot of stuff gets said that is so far from the truth. But that's the world we live in today. But I'm glad to have him. And I can't think of anyone else in that position right now doing what he is doing. And thank God he's there.
Mayor Duffy, thank you very much for joining us here at the Hustle Firm. We really appreciate all the hustle that you're putting in, especially as we try to get back to business. So thank you again for your time today.
No, Dan, John, thank you. And thank everybody on the phone. Thanks for what you do and all the work you do. And anytime we can be of help, please call. We can get you an answer. Happy to come back on in the future. I think the more information we can share, the more questions we can answer, the better off we are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
All right, guys, stay healthy. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So again, special thanks to Mayor Duffy there for joining us today. So we'll get real quick into some other things, and again, thank you everybody for the questions related to this. We will, Mayor Duffy has promised to get some of these questions back to us, and like you heard, hopefully get on again. So we'll try to get some of these specific questions answered that we didn't get to today. Now, for some latest news on the PPP, a couple of things we wanted to highlight. So again, some of the players, we've kind of gone over these guys every single week. We've got Mnuchin at Treasury and the SBA, Jovita, the Senate, House, and President Trump. So what we're focusing on today that's been all over the news is the certification. So back on the 27th of April, the SBA noted that $2 billion has been declined or returned and would be made available, which was a precursor to them, highlighting the fact that certain private schools with significant endowments took PPP loans. This is a tweet from May 1st. There's another tweet about how the Hospitality Trust had $68 million in a PPP. So they were highlighting this, Shake Shack, the Lakers, et cetera. So then they came out and said, look, if you applied for a loan and you certified that there was uncertainty in your business and ahead, which made you require this loan, that you could return the funds. And they'd increase the deadline until May 14th today. Then they came out, again, they said May 14th, you could return the funds. They've been hammering, May 14th. Then they came out today and actually said it was extended. Marco Rubio actually sent out a tweet that said, hey, if you've noticed, the number of loans and the amount of loans has dropped significantly for two reasons. One, a lack of guidance on the exemptions for the 75%, and two, scrutiny over what businesses, should you be receiving a loan in the first place. So it was a reminder from everybody that you needed to make this certification in good faith. They also came out and said that they had a call. This is actually on the 12th in the morning, and said, hey, we had a good call with Steve Mnuchin saying we need more flexibility and we're going to get more flexibility on loan forgiveness. So this is a really good sign that for the restaurants, the salons, the gyms that can't open right now, they might extend the period of time, the 8-week period of time, so that you can use the funds once you can actually open and in whatever phase you're in, phase 2, 3, or 4, like we just kind of went over with Duffy. And then a quick update this morning, or as of yesterday, was that 2.7 million loans in the second round for 193 billion had been given out. So that's far from the 310 billion. This is obviously lasting a lot longer than round one. There's still a lot of money that hasn't been given out. Again, probably because of the certification and the lack of clear guidance. Speaking of guidance, two significant things that came out over the last couple of days is the certification. So remember, everyone had to certify that there was an economic need for this loan. That came out on the 23rd. Then the SBA came out on the 29th and said it is going to review all loans in excess of 2 million. That means they're going to, audit the decision, they're going to audit the documents you submitted, et cetera, for how much money you got. They came out on the 12th and said, hey, this is causing a lot of confusion. A lot of people are losing sleep every night and saying, I should return the money right now. And they said, look, if your loan is under $2 million, you'll be deemed to have made the required certification in good faith. They're not going to throw you in jail. They're not going to come after you. And actually, the certification is okay. If your loan is over $2 million, they still aren't going to throw you in jail per se, unless there's obviously clear fraud. But they're not going to throw you in jail for making that certification and trying to get the money. All they're going to ask you to do is pay it back. So this is very huge news for all. We had many clients come out, reach out to us and ask us about, should I return the money? What should I do? You know, the certification. So those are some big news there. The second piece of news was this taxability of the funds. So reminder that in the CARES Act, the income was not taxable. They specifically wrote the act that the income was not taxable. Then the IRS came out and said, well, actually, even though the income's not taxable, the expenses are not deductible, which same difference if you're following along, that if you can't deduct the expenses, the income is taxable. That came out in Notice 2020. So the big update there is that there's been a bill introduced in the Senate, Senate Bill 3612, that says, hey, this is not what we intended, and we want the expenses to be deductible. So they've introduced this bill in the Senate. They're trying to get it passed to make those expenses deductible again. So Senate Bill 3612, this was introduced on the 5th. The text of it came out this morning that says, you know, the intent of Congress is for the expenses to be deductible and the income to be tax-free. So those are two big updates that came out. So with that, I think we'll turn to a couple questions. You know, we're running up here on about 35 minutes. So again, the couple things that Mayor Duffy said, we've got some questions. Want to reiterate the website for guidance on reopening is forward.newyork.gov or newyorkforward.gov to go there.
A couple of things, Dan. So I just wanted to cover some of the things we heard from Mr. Duffy as it relates to reopening. Because we're getting a lot of questions. Obviously, we can't answer all the questions about specific industries and when you're allowed to reopen. And it sounds like even, you know, Mr. Duffy was unable to do that. But what I did take out of his talk are the 4 items that he mentioned, that when it is your time to reopen, you will be required that everyone's wearing face masks, that social distancing is put in place, that hand washing needs to happen, and that disinfecting needs to occur. So, and he said that a few times. So if you're out there wondering when you can open or what guidelines exist when you're able to open, I would follow those 4 items. It doesn't sound to me that they're going to have a lot of specifics industry by industry here. You know, for example, construction companies can open tomorrow and they don't have specific guidelines just for construction companies. It sounds like all the guidelines are going to be general. You need to follow the New York State rules. I also picked up that there's a lot of talk about plans, and I didn't hear that there's a requirement to submit a plan. Mr. Duffy actually said that they're not really reviewing plans in detail. And I know a lot of our clients have asked about, hey, I've submitted my plan, I just want it approved so I can open. It doesn't sound like it'll be a case-by-case basis as far as when you can open. So just wanted to kind of debrief on some of the things that he mentioned today and give, you know, as much guidance as we can, as we can't answer specific questions as to when certain industries will be able to open.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good point. You know, again, he said, will you be required to submit plans? No. But will you maybe have to go to a website and certify that you do have a plan? The answer to that was maybe answering a couple questions, kind of like the PPP application of, do you have a plan in place, and you know, are you going to provide PPE? So we're really pointing to that newyorkforward.gov website, as Mayor Duffy did, to try to get more information on how to reopen safely. So with that, I think, you know, we'll answer one quick question here. So we've got, again, a lot of things in the chat, and a couple people, actually, Andrew Claus has given a link here to that thing. So we'll make sure to send that out in the chat and in the follow-up email that we have. So with the PPP, we had a question come in. was, can I buy back PTO, which is falling into a lot of questions that we have of, can I get bonuses? Can I get creative with payroll? So our recommendation there is that, stick to the 25% cap. Make a good business decision for now, because we do think that there's going to be additional flexibility coming out by the Treasury that says, hey, we realized that there wasn't a lot of time to spend this money. We realized we didn't have a lot of guidance for you. So make smart business decisions when you're going through things for the PPP. So that's really the main advice that we have, especially with the guidance that came out over the last week.
Yeah, a lot of questions on certification. We've had, really the SBA and the government has scared a lot of people into really making them question if they have been impacted and should take this money or not. And the guidance that came out yesterday was, comforting for those businesses that were wondering whether or not they should take the money. So one of our questions here, our original PPP loan is $2.5 million. We will end up spending about $1.9 million of the funds on the qualified expenses. Will we still have an audit? I would say plan on it. Although they did say that the audits could be limited, and the certification, once again, is on you. You have to keep in mind the amount of volume. There's been over 3 million, close to 3 million loans going on here, more. And to be able to audit those and review those is, there just isn't enough manpower to do that. So you have to keep that in mind. I think that's why they came out with the clarification. The other thing I wanted to point out that I wanted to mention earlier is Dan's looking pretty sharp today in his sport coat. And I'm just thankful that we don't have a poll about best dressed today. Thanks, Shelby, for not, putting that one up there. But I thought Brian had stolen that blazer from you in Miami. Good thing that you got it back.
Somehow I got it back. I did get it back, but I appreciate that, John. Thanks for the compliment. And I was actually going to ask Governor Cuomo today, when can salons open? But I figured John doesn't really care about that. So, best hair, best beard. We won't have that competition today. We all know who wins there.
I tried to go get my spray tan today, and they're not open yet.
They're not open. We should have asked Duffy about spray tans and haircuts. That's the big thing we didn't do today. All right. Well, with that, everybody, again, thank you for joining us. Stay strong. That's our big message. Stick with us. We're actually going to send out a poll this week on if these are continuing to be relevant for you. We really hope they are, but we want to know what you guys want to know about. So we appreciate this captive audience. We appreciate everybody asking questions and whatnot. We want to know what you want to know about so that we can craft these weekly webinars and keep them going if you guys are interested. So we'll send out that poll after this, and you let us know what you want us to talk about, and we'll make sure that we tailor it for you guys. So thank you again. Stay strong, and hopefully we'll see you next Thursday at 1:30.